I'm like, the girls wanted to see you before they left.
Did they leave? Oh,
They said,
I was gonna go by
Not
and,
yet,
go by,
One second.
Sassy Girls and see them, and I just,
well, they quit Sassy Girls this summer.
oh, I didn't
Because
know
they
that.
He sounds like quite a character.
He would be in a way.
It's one thing, you know when you told me
They need
when I
money.
graduated
Real
from high
life.
school?
Go.
Okay.
So they worked all summer up at Ruth Chris. And yes, they're gone, but they told me, they said, Mom, you have to get her to come over when we come back.
Oh, that's sweet. Well, we will, for sure. I would love that. They're so dear.
I'd like, do I hear a motion? Do I hear a motion to open, this, work session?
Make a motion to open this work session.
Do I hear a second? A second? Do we have to vote? Yeah. Okay, now we'll vote. How did, if all in favor, raise your right hand. Any opposed? Okay, there we go.
All right, so we're picking back up on board member training from a couple weeks ago when Chris Campbell and I were here, providing training for board members and senior leadership. And this part of the training is focused specifically on conflicts of interest, and the North Carolina state laws regarding board members and public officials, in terms of ethics and those types of issues. So, here we go. All right, so generally speaking, most people think of ethics as referring to questions of right and wrong. But accepted ethical principles include things like trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, accountability, fairness, caring, and civic virtue and citizenship. The school board, one of y'all's policies pertains directly to the code of ethics that you all have agreed to follow. The policy itself says the Jackson County Board of Education recognizes that collectively and individually, all members of the board must adhere to a code of ethics as required by two separate North Carolina state laws. And then the policy itself, policy 2120, goes through your ethical requirements as a board. The standards to guide you include the need to obey all applicable laws, the need to uphold the integrity and independence of the board itself, the need to avoid impropriety in the exercise of your duties, the need to perform faithfully your duties, and the need to conduct the affairs of the board in an open and public manner, complying with the Open Meetings Act and the Public Records Act. This is really small on screen, but it is a copy and paste from that policy 2120 regarding your specific commitments as board members in terms of ethical responsibilities under state law. So I encourage you all to look at the policy. Moving on to specific state laws. Under the North Carolina statutes, it is a class 1 misdemeanor for school boards to willfully omit, neglect, or refuse to perform the duties of office. An additional sanction is removal from office. And I don't know if you guys have seen in the news, there is a school board, I believe in the eastern part of the state, who's currently trying to remove a board member. Do you remember what county that's in, Dr. Ayers?
It's one right along the coast.
Yeah.
But I can't remember which one. Is it the Pero?
It's pretty rare, really, really rare that a school board tries to remove one of its own members, mainly because school board members are individually elected, and the general idea is that you are responsible to the people who elected you, but there is a process to remove an individual member if they aren't performing their duties. There are additional state statutes involving conflict of interest, and we're going to go through each of these. The first one, prohibition against benefiting from public contracts. So the first prohibition in this particular state statute is that school board members and school system employees involved in making or administering a contract on behalf of the board cannot derive a direct benefit from the contract unless there is an exception. There's always an exception. The second prohibition is a school board member and a school system employee who will derive a direct benefit from a contract with the school board, but who is not involved in making or administering the contract, cannot attempt to influence any other person involved in making or administering that contract. The third prohibition in the same statute is that school board members and school system employees cannot solicit or receive any gift, favor, reward, service, promise of reward, including a promise of future employment in exchange for recommending, influencing, or attempting to influence the award of a contract by the school board he or she serves. So when we say making and administering contracts, what we mean is you are making a contract if you participate in the development of the terms of the contract or the preparation of the award of the contract. So that is what is considered making a contract. Board members cannot simply decide not to vote on a contract to get around that prohibition of making a contract.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So most of them serve on more than one board of some manner.
Yes.
Is there a difference between a contract that involves the exchange of money or not? And am I asking that question too early?
Maybe asking it too early.
Okay,
Let me go back here.
I'm just thinking, I'm sorry to just interject, I wanna be clear on this.
No, you're
but
fine.
I think Wes serves on Great Smokies.
Mountain Project.
Mountain Projects, you're on West Bridge. Dr. Gillard is on the Blue Ridge School Foundation and a couple others. So I'm thinking of sometimes those contracts for whatever, not gonna benefit her, her,
Gotcha.
but, and they don't have an exchange of money per se.
Uh-huh.
So would they still be allowed, for lack of a better word, to serve on that board and it not be a conflict of interest?
Gotcha. Okay, so this prohibition against benefiting, and when we're talking about direct benefit, there's a particular definition of that I'll go over in just a second.
Okay.
It's mainly about proceeds and
Money.
income.
Yeah, okay.
There is a separate prohibition involving serving on a school board and being involved in other nonprofit boards and not having a conflict there. But it has a little bit of a different standard.
Thank you.
So administrator contract means that those who oversee the performance of the contract, mainly school employees, or those who have authority to make decisions about a contract, which is the school board. Administrative contract does not include those performing ministerial duties related to the contract. That just means that administrative contract does not include those performing functions that have zero discretion. So if the contract spells out a specific way to do something, and that's the way you have to do it, then you being involved does not make you someone who administers the contract. You're just implementing what has been already decided. So direct benefit under this particular state statute means that a board member or a covered employee and the board member's spouse or the covered employee's spouse has more than a 10% ownership or other interest in the company that is a party to the contract, derives any income or commission directly from the contract, or acquires property under the contract. A school board member or covered employee is not involved in making or administering a contract solely because the performance of ministerial duties, and that again is one that does not require discretion. So to help conceptualize a little bit, we're gonna go through a couple short scenarios. Scenario 1, Betty board member owns 100 shares of stock in Office Depot. Other than this, Betty has no connection with Office Depot. Is there a problem if the school system enters into a contract with Office Depot for the purchase of office equipment? Elizabeth's shaking her head no, and Elizabeth is right. Betty's small investment in Office Depot would not be defined as deriving a direct benefit because she does not own 10% of Office Depot. There's no problem with the school entering into a contract with the company with Betty voting on that contract itself. So you gotta look at the, really that definition of what direct benefit means. Scenario number 2, you are employed as a salesperson by ABC Car Dealership. Before you were elected to the school board, you earned commission from selling vehicles to the school system. After you are sworn in as a board member, may the school system continue to buy cars from ABC Car Dealership. After you are sworn in, may you continue to receive a commission for selling vehicles to the school system. And number 3, after you're sworn in, may your spouse, who's also a salesperson for the dealership, receive a commission for selling vehicles to the school system.
Say no to 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
Yep, that's right. No to 2 and 3. Number 1, the car dealership may still sell cars to the school system, assuming you or your spouse don't have that 10% ownership interest in the dealership. Number 3, after you are sworn in as a board member, may your brother, who also works for ABC Car Dealership, receive commission from selling vehicles to the school system. Yep. This particular statute does not prohibit siblings. It only prohibits board members, covered employees, and spouses.
Probably not in your best interest to do that, but yeah, I mean,
But if you
even though
have a son or daughter who's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that funny tummy feeling there.
Is it that if they live in your home, like what if my brother lives with me?
Because you don't have a direct benefit.
Right. Technically, under the statute, you don't have that direct benefit, but
It can be perceived.
right. All right, number 4, you own a party supply store and regularly sell balloons, paper products, and banners to local schools. After you are sworn in as a board member, may you continue to sell items to local schools? Nope, your party supply store is gonna be straight out of business if you can't sell to the school anymore. But it's because you are the owner of that party supply store and you would receive that direct benefit. Number 5, what about a landscaping business? After you are sworn in, may you donate your time to plant trees at the high school from your business? Yes. You can donate time, money, and resources, but you must donate those items. You cannot charge anything for them. Selling the trees to the school district even below actual cost would violate the statute. So those exceptions to the prohibition against benefiting from public contracts, the statute does not prohibit the school board from employing the spouse of a school board member or the spouse of the superintendent. If a board member engages in activity prohibited by the statute, it is a class 1 misdemeanor criminal offense, punishable by a fine and sometimes imprisonment depending on his prior criminal record. You've got a rap sheet.
With board.
The additional sanction is that any contract that the school board had entered into would be considered void. So you guys know or getting to know that I love cases. I love talking about the facts of the cases. So in Gibbs v. Mayo, the Hyde County Board of Commissioners, the chair of the board was one of 2 licensed contractors in the county. And the board the county commissioners saw that there needed to be work done on the courthouse and the local health department. And so for the courthouse, they did not go through a formal bidding process for the work to be done in the courthouse. They just decided that the chair could do that work. And then the local health department, they went through an informal bidding process. The chair ended up winning that bid somehow. And so he did over $270,000 worth of work on those two. Some taxpayers and residents of the county ended up suing the county commissioner, saying that he received unjust enrichment from those two contracts. And so they wanted the chair of the county commissioners to give that money back, and the North Carolina Court of Appeals agreed. And the North Carolina Court of Appeals ruled that he had to return all of the proceeds that he had received from those two jobs, even though he argued that the value of his work was exponentially higher, and so he had provided that labor and those services at lower value. The court said that didn't matter, you have to return everything that you received. The court's language that I liked in that case was, you must suffer the loss incident to his breach of his public duty. You know, they just sit there and write all of it.
The renovation.
Yeah, it is cost.
Maybe that county knew what they were doing.
All right, misuse of confidential information. It is unlawful for any officer or employee of the state or an officer or employee of any of its political subdivisions, including school boards, in contemplation of official action by himself or by the board itself, or in reliance on information which was made to him in his official capacity and which has not been made public, to either acquire a pecuniary interest in any property, transaction, or enterprise, which may be affected by the information that the board member receives, or if the board member intentionally aids another to do any of those acts. Misusing confidential information to gain financial interest is also a class 1 misdemeanor.
Pecuniary is not a word I'm familiar with.
Financial.
No.
Board members are prohibited from soliciting or receiving personal financial gain from their position through intimidation, undue influence, or misuse of employees. That, however, does not include financial gain received for lawfully acting in your official capacity or with approval of the board itself. Violation under this particular statute is a felony punishable by imprisonment ranging from 4 months to 25 months. Okay, here is the prohibition regarding board contracts and nonprofit boards. So this statute applies to public officials, which includes school board members and the superintendent. Public officials cannot knowingly participate in making or administering contracts with a nonprofit with which they are associated. Making or administering contracts includes awarding money through grants, loans, or other appropriations. So board members connected to a nonprofit that is contracting with the board must record their recusal with the board clerk before the board enters the contract. And I think a couple meetings ago, Abigail did that, and that was a good example of just saying, I'm recusing myself from this contract because you also sit on that board, the nonprofit board. Under this statute, making or administering a contract includes deliberating or voting on the contract, attempting to influence any other person who is deliberating or voting, or soliciting or receiving those gifts or favors or promises in exchange for trying to influence that contract.
So I guess that like in my case, even though there wasn't an exchange of funds, which I think is what Dr. Ayers was asking, to me, it's still appropriate to, if there's a benefit, even if it's not a financial benefit for
Right.
the nonprofit to be,
Right.
is that what you were asking?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm asking. And what comes to mind, because we got a recent grant from the Blue Ridge School Ed Foundation, is they gave us $115,000 to open our 3-year-old preschool classroom. And so that is different from yours and yours because there was an exchange of money. So Dr. Dillard serves on both of those boards. She's one of, Jake, I don't remember, 7, 11 on that board? The foundation board,
Yes.
one of those numbers. It's changing, it's evolving. So it is a benefit for us as a school system.
Yes.
So we didn't really vote on that action, so it would have been more of an action on the foundation's end. So in that case, would she need to
That board
recuse
vote.
herself from that board vote?
Yes.
I know I'm talking with my hands, just to keep herself clean, because we wanna do that, and it certainly benefits our district, we want it.
Right.
But I don't ever want anyone to question that.
Mhm.
So, okay, that makes sense then, good.
So with Mountain Projects, they like administer monies for several
They do.
groups, like Head Start and things like that. So I guess for me, it wouldn't necessarily be something that we were doing with Mountain Projects, but if we were doing something with Head Start or something like that, I guess would I have to recuse myself for being on Mountain Projects board? Because there's,
No, you would just, whenever a contract between one of their projects and the school district came up, regardless of which meeting you're at, Mountain Projects or the school board, you just recuse yourself from the vote on that contract.
That makes sense. Just to be clean.
Just to be clear.
I have a question. So what if you're sitting on 2 different boards and, so I'm on a school board, but I'm on a board with a summer camp. And I know that summer camp can provide something. I can't make any suggestions.
That's a good question. I would advise you want to make sure there isn't a perception of attempting to influence one way or another.
Okay.
And that's really difficult because when you do have that knowledge, that would be helpful to everyone else.
Mhm.
But I, under the way that the statute is written, attempting to influence any other persons who's gonna vote on a contract between the summer camp and the school district,
Mhm.
that's what you wanna be wary of.
Okay.
So it's really subjective in the sense of you're not attempting to influence anyone, you're just providing information.
Okay.
You can look at it either way. So if you get that funny tummy feeling, I would just say recuse yourself.
But she could be engaged in conversation and give ideas, but when it comes time to vote, that's when you, so I think it's acceptable to be part of that conversation, but when it's time to make that final decision and vote.
Agreed.
Because you have knowledge and that would be,
Right.
you do know.
Well, see, that's the thing I was thinking about the whole brother. Like, I know my spouse would benefit financially, but if you have someone, like, we're in a small town,
Right.
so we know people, so you go, oh, this person would be great. And you can trust them because I know them personally, but then like trying to benefit from it, I don't know.
But that would only be a recommendation. In the end, the vote would have to go through the board. So you can make a recommendation whether they went through it or not.
True.
You could
And then
recuse
Make sure
yourself
you
from the
don't have
vote.
to vote.
Okay.
You could throw out a name. Hey, we need
Okay.
so-and-so to be a contractor for a blank, for a small, $5,000 project, but in the end, you wouldn't vote.
Okay. That makes sense.
And it is always best practice for, if you are making a recommendation for a particular entity or an individual to perform a service for the district, and you know that entity or individual personally, to disclose that as part of the conversation. Just like, this contractor that I'm recommending was my college roommate. That's an important piece of information.
That's a good point.
Okay.
So again, with this one, contracts in violation are considered void. They would remain in effect until an alternative can be arranged. If immediate termination would harm public health or welfare, like a pre-K classroom staying open, and the continuation is approved by the chair of the local government commission following a request from the board to continue the contract. As with the other state statutes, violations of this statute is a class 1 misdemeanor. Unless the contract is between the board and banks, savings and loan associations, and public utilities, is for an interest in property conveyed through condemnation, or is an employment relationship between the board and the spouse of a board member or superintendent. Those are the exceptions. All right, accepting gifts and favors from contractors. Just don't do it.
Sorry, don't do it.
Yeah. Board members and covered employees are prohibited from accepting gifts and favors from contractors and potential contractors with the board. Contractors themselves are also prohibited from giving gifts and favors to board members and covered employees. The prohibition applies to school board members and any employees of a board who prepare plans, specifications, or estimates for public contracts, award or administer public contracts, or inspect or supervise construction. So someone like the deputy superintendent or superintendent, the statute covers them as well. And this is hard to read, but this was a copy and paste from an actual email from a different client, an employee who received this email, and it says, I hope you are enjoying the last days of summer and looking forward to school starting and football. I wanted to let you know we have tickets available for the first home Panthers game on Friday. This will be our only home preseason game this year. It is a night game, so that should add to the excitement and be a bit cooler. We play the Buffalo Bills. Kickoff is at 7. Let me know if you're interested. You can have them or pay for them if you prefer. Either way is fine with me. First come, first serve. And the email was from someone who was a potential contractor for the school district. And we were like, are you serious? They just put it in writing, sent this to you. So if you get one of those, let us know.
Who'd they send it to?
They sent it to a covered employee for a school district. So the prohibition extends to the contractors themselves, subcontractors or suppliers from giving gifts and favors if they currently have a contract, have performed under a contract with the board during the past year, or anticipate bidding on a contract with the board in the future. So there are many gifts not considered or not covered by the statute. Gifts for participating in meetings, advertising items or souvenirs of nominal value, meals furnished at banquets, donations to other professional organizations to defray meeting expenses when you are a member of those professional organizations, customary gifts and favors, if you have a different personal relationship with the person and they give you a gift for that personal relationship and not the professional relationship. And gifts permitted to legislators, legislative employees, and other state agency officials and employees covered by the State Ethics Act, including food and beverages for immediate consumption in connection with public events, informational materials, actual expenses for attending educational meetings, speaking at meetings, conferences, those types of things, or a plaque or non-monetary memento. Gifts accepted on behalf of the school system for the benefit of the school system. Anything made available to or distributed to the general public. Gifts from family members. Gifts given as part of a business, civic, religious, fraternal, personal, or commercial relationship if it's not related to that service. And food and beverages for immediate consumption, if not given by a lobbyist, it gets very specific. And food and beverages for immediate consumption at an organized gathering which the individual is invited to attend for purposes related to your official duties. So it covers those things at conferences and meetings so that you don't have to worry about taking a bottle of water. Again, the sanctions under this state statute is a class 1 misdemeanor for the school board member, a school employee, and the contractor. And those, if you receive a gift, it cannot be claimed as a tax deduction. It's a double whammy. So this is interesting. The North Carolina Attorney General has interpreted this statute as prohibiting those doing business or seeking to do business with the board, including your school board attorney and other independent contractors, from taking board members or other public officials out for meals. So we're not trying to be cheap. We're just gonna follow the Attorney General's opinion on this one.
That's just an opinion.
Yeah.
Technically, you could buy it.
It's a judge's opinion, so.
We're picking out where
There are also federal conflict of interest rules, mostly from what's known as the Uniform Guidance. The federal conflict of interest rules applies to all employees, officers, and agents participating in the selection, award, or administration of a contract involving federal funds. And in K through 12, those are a lot of funds. Title I, II, and III, the IDEA, Child Nutrition Act, the CARES Act, the ESSER Act. When we receive these funds, we, as a school district, agree to follow the uniform guidance. And part of the uniform guidance requires a written policy that spells out or incorporates uniform guidance rules, and that policy is 8305, the Federal Grant Administration. And the federal government also requires a policy on purchasing rules, and that's the regulation of policy 8305. For board members, no employee, member, officer, or agent may participate in selection, award, or administration of a contract supported with federal funds if he or she has a real or apparent conflict of interest. And that occurs when that employee, his or her family, his or her business or employer, or any other party would gain a financial or other interest or tangible personal benefit from a contract award. So it has a much broader definition than state statutes in that what a direct benefit is. Board members cannot deliberate, vote on, or otherwise participate in a contract supported in whole or in part by federal funds when the member has a conflict that violates federal rules. So again, they expanded, it's not just a recusal from voting, it's a recusal from deliberation itself. Consequences for the district can range from audit findings up to a loss of those federal funds, and for the individual board member up to a possible criminal referral. And this is in your materials as well. It's a comparison of the federal conflict of interest rules and the state rules. So for federal conflict of interest rules, they are more expansive than North Carolina state conflict of interest rules. The uniform guidance rules are for federal purchasing standards, but violations could implicate other federal or state criminal laws as well. When in doubt, err on the side of caution and always seek guidance. Any questions?
So I'm gonna summarize just so I can put this together in my head. That federal, when we were talking with Kim about she could throw out a name and participate in the conversation but not vote. Federal says no, she's not even part of the deliberation of that. So she's just gonna be quiet. When it comes to the conversation, no, I don't mean that bad, I'm like, when people are deliberating,
Right.
she's just gonna recuse herself, and I don't know if that means that she leaves the conversation completely or leaves the room, but she won't participate in the deliberation. I didn't mean that rude by anyway. I was just like, I'm gonna sit back and listen,
Right.
is what I hear in my head.
Yeah, there's no conflict of interest law that requires school board members to leave the room.
Okay.
For state conflict of interest, just keep in mind, if you serve on other boards, what types of conflicts could be possible, and because you know by serving on both boards what's gonna come before each board. And for federal conflict of interest, it is that broader, no vote, also no deliberation on it. If it's a contract where federal funds are involved and you have conflict there.
it would make sense to, or if you know or throw an idea out, but then you're not part of deciding, like, I mean, if there's a contract between 4 or 5, we're picking between 4 or 5. Throwing out a person out there, but then not being part of the deliberation of, the choice. Is that what I'm hearing? Like, you can at least put the idea out on the table.
Sure.
But when the final decision is made, just
Right.
put yourself out of it. Gotcha. Makes sense.
All right, thanks, guys. Made it through all your ethics training.
Now,
So what we're gonna do is because the regular meeting doesn't start till 6,
are we gonna pause, should we pause the recess or close?
I would just adjourn.
Okay.
but then we're gonna keep the same meeting. We're still live.
Okay.
We're gonna keep the same meeting. So what we discussed with Jeremiah is that he's gonna throw up just a screen and then turn off the volume so no one can hear it and keep running the same. So would that still be, we would just reopen the meeting again? Okay, got it.
So we're gonna adjourn, make a motion to adjourn the work session.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the work session?
I move that we adjourn the work session.
Do I hear a second?
A second.
How does everyone vote? Raise your right hand for yes.
All in favor.
All in favor. And those opposed? I can't get my head wrapped around
All right, I
that.
told Jeremiah to turn us off.
If we were opposed, then you would have to continue. Make a motion that we open tonight's board meeting.
A second.
Excuse me?
We are ready to begin, please.
Anyone opposed? We'll begin tonight's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone please. Flag is right here. Should we move it? Thank you, Jeremiah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Earlier today, we had code of ethics training for our board members. So we are now in the process of signing that we did that ethics training. And it's that time again, so we'll have election for our school board officers. Do I hear a motion? I make a motion that we name Elizabeth Cooper as our chairperson and Wes as our vice chair.
Do we have a second?
All those in favor? Anyone opposed?
Thank you very much.
Now do I hear a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Move that we approve tonight's agenda.
Do I have a second? All those in favor? Okay, now Dr. Ayers, I think you have a special recognition.
I do, and we certainly missed recognitions last month because we didn't want to invite students and staff to have to come in during our July meeting. But tonight, we are recognizing Smoky Mountain High School student Caleb Phillips. So Caleb, if you don't mind coming on up here. And for those of you that are here, if you turn and see, there are some pictures on the back. So Caleb, come all the way up here if you don't mind. It's hard when you get talked about and you have to sit here. And then you have to look at yourself in there. So, Caleb is a senior at Smoky Mountain High School and he's dually enrolled at Southwestern Community College. Caleb was selected to participate in the State Youth Leadership Conference, which is an initiative of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. He applied as a member of the 4-H Youth Leadership Council here in Jackson County. Caleb was selected based on his application. Part of the process, he had to make a formal presentation to the Jackson County Board of Commissioners on a topic of concern to him. On August 2nd, he presented to the commissioners about the dire need for a regulation-sized track at Smoky Mountain High School. Caleb is an exemplary student as well as an outstanding cross-country and track athlete. In fact, he is captain of the Smoky Mountain High School track team. Caleb attended the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Board of Directors 115th Annual Conference in Cabarrus County on August 11th through 13th. He participated in workshops and heard speakers on leadership, which I want to point out, that was still summertime and he was participating in leadership activities. Commissioner Gail Woody, who is here this evening present with us, said this about Caleb. I had breakfast Saturday morning with Caleb, a rising senior at Smoky High, and our county's representative at the State Youth Leadership Conference. Caleb represented us so well. After graduation, Caleb plans to attend a 4-year university and major in mechanical engineering. We're so proud of you, Caleb, and your desire to lead in both your school and your community. Congratulations. Dave, want to do a picture? Sure. And then we're going to let Caleb speak if he would like.
One more? Okay.
Thank you. Do you have anything you want to share with the group? The board is kind of an audience this way, you guys. Oh, this way.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with most of that, really. You really spoke about most of what was really about the conference. I think that's it.
Very good. And I want to recognize County Commissioner Gail Woody, who's here. She wanted to definitely be here to support Caleb, so congratulations. You want to speak? Come on up, Gail.
No, I just want to make one comment. I want to recognize Heather Gordon from our Jackson County 4-H because she really is the impetus behind the Youth Leadership Council and deserves so much credit for what she's doing with our young people.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to accept our board minutes for our meeting on July 26th?
I move that we accept the board meetings from July 26th meeting.
Have a second? A second. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, now I need to have a motion for our session minutes for our special call meeting on August the 11th. I'm sorry, I can't talk tonight. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the special called meeting minutes from August 11th.
Do I have to hear a second? All those in favor? All right, now let's do the superintendent report.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. It's been a phenomenal start to the school year, but before I share about the first 7 days of school, because we've successfully got the first 7 days behind us now, I'm compelled to share the excitement of the first ever back to school bash on August 13th. Here are just a few statistics. Approximately 700 book bags were distributed, more than 1,200 hot dog lunches provided, dozens of haircuts given, boxes and boxes of school supplies dispersed, over 30 schools and community groups represented, and a variety of other free services were made available to our families. The day was absolutely exhausting and exhilarating for everyone involved. We already have plans to make this an annual event, with next year's bash being on Saturday, August the 5th, 2023. And the event was definitely a success thanks to our partnership with Rusty Ellis and his staff at the Cullowhee Rec Center. They were super accommodating and definitely a big part of why this happened. We opened our doors for open house events on both August 11th and 18th. I was fortunate to be able to attend a good many of those events, and families were out in full force. In fact, parking was a major issue at open houses. The lines to meet teachers were lengthy as everyone was eager to meet their teachers. The first days of school have been extremely busy and engaging. I've seen students and staff interact in the most positive manner that I've seen in a really long time. I also love seeing the joy of the 3- and 4-year-olds in all of our preschool classrooms. A side note, we're serving 120 preschool kiddos. The Jackson County Public School staff really deserves all the accolades for preparing school buildings, classrooms, cafeterias, and buses as we readied for students. Everyone has worked hard to guarantee that the year began with an optimistic culture. I also want to give a shout out to our local law enforcement agencies, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office and the Silva Police Department. Over the summer, they've been working with our school leadership and district leadership teams to ensure that our buildings are safe for everyone. Every school was visited, thoroughly walked through, and recommendations made to the leadership teams. We continue to have an excellent partnership with all of our public safety agencies in Jackson County. On another note, this Thursday, September 1st, the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction will release the 21-22 state testing results. I'm confident we will see strong growth from our students across the district. Furthermore, I believe with our common curriculum that we now have, our solid instructional practices, and the expertise of our dedicated teachers, we will see a positive growth trajectory over the next several years. And finally, I want to offer a huge thanks to our coaching staff across the district. We are lucky to have coaches who love teaching and working with our student athletes. Their hours are long, their compensation is little, and fatigue is real. Yet they continue to strive for excellence on the fields, tracks, courts, and mats. To each coach, I'm very thankful that they pour themselves into our student athletes. And as always, a big thank you to our bus drivers and a plea for a few more bus drivers because we always need bus drivers. Anyone interested can reach out and contact Josh Francis, our transportation director. So I predict it's going to be a fantastic school year in Jackson County Public Schools, respectfully.
Thank you. You're next on the agenda.
Next on the agenda. So a little background about the next item. This is the School Justice Partnership, 30th Judicial District Jackson County Agreement. That's a mouthful, I know. So in essence, I met a couple weeks ago with Dusty Snyder, who works with alongside Judge Earwood. And one of the important things that we have in our community, in Jackson County specifically, is a really strong partnership with our Jackson County Sheriff's Department and the Silva Police Department. So this agreement doesn't necessarily, it's not an agenda item. It is for information. And so you all have it in your packet and had an opportunity to review it. More than anything, it talks about the open communication that we will have with those agencies so that we will continue to primarily keep our kids safe, keep our schools safe, but also to really be diligent about keeping students in school. And so these things that go along in this agreement talk about our desire to try as many alternatives before we have to send a kid out of the school building. So hopefully, before we get to the point where there may be a suspension, that we have put into place as many proactive steps to avoid that, because that is a last resort, unless it's a safety issue. And then we recognize that that should be the first thing we do, is to keep all of our schools safe. So this is just an agreement with some responsibilities. It hasn't been reviewed in a couple of years. I think COVID impacted that definitely, but we want to continue this partnership. So we will be meeting. The agreement says that we meet annually, but when I met with Dusty Snyder, we agreed we wanted to do that more often than just an annual review. So we are fortunate in our school system to have law enforcement and court officials who support keeping our kids in school, but also keeping our schools safe. So just wanted to fill you in on that agreement that we have. And if there's anything that comes out of that, as far as changes that will need to be made in the future, I will certainly keep you abreast of that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Laura Dills.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Congratulations, members of the board. You have in your information packet a copy of our memorandum of understanding with Mountain Projects, which is our local entity that offers Head Start in our local community. So that is an ongoing annual MOU that we have with them. It basically says that if they have students that they would like to be screened for identified learning needs, that we will support them in that process. And that's been an ongoing effort. But as we have personally expanded our pre-K programs, it's also included that as they have students, 4-year-olds in their pre-K programs who come into our kindergarten classrooms, we want as much data, as much information about those students as we can. Dr. Ayers and I both, have the shared vision of expanding pre-K, and sometimes that's in our buildings and sometimes that's other places. We just want JCPS students to have a great pre-K experience. So this also allows them to share information with us with the parents' permission to share their academic information from their pre-K experience, and also allows us to do activities with their parents to help with the transition to kindergarten. So I've been able to meet with them, with their parents virtually and through different ways. You know, we can send invites to them to make sure that they're able to come to our back to school bash. So it's just a partnership to say that our entity and they, as Mountain Projects Head Start, want to collaborate to make sure our 4-year-olds coming into kindergarten programs are as best prepared as possible. So do you have any questions about that MOU? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Walker.
So good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Ayers. I have in your information packet, you will find a copy of our August unaudited financial statement. It does contain the comparison data for last year, and it does continue to reflect that we are within our interim budget resolution for this year.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, no one has signed up for public comments.
Okay. Christie, we will ask you.
Try to do that.
Thank you. So I am on your agenda for the first action item, and in your packets is the copy of the 2023 budget resolution that I'm asking the board to approve. If you have any questions at this time, I'm happy to answer those. If not, then I'm seeking your approval.
Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the budget resolution for 2022, 2023.
Do I have a second? Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. And Jason Watson, can you give us a roof? Sounds like you get to come for roofs quite often.
Yes, so I do come before you this afternoon to get a couple more roof maintenance agreements approved. The guy that does this, or the company that does this, do want to get the biggest part done before winter time comes, so probably bring a couple more maybe next. But these is for Smoky Mountain Elementary and Cullowhee Valley Schools. I do seek your approval for these two roof maintenance.
Do you hear a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the annual roof inspection and maintenance for Smoky Mountain Elementary and Cullowhee Valley School.
Do I have a second? Okay, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay. And Laura Gill.
Good evening again. Thank you. So you also have in your board packet our consolidated federal programs application for this school year, for the 22-23 school year. That's our title programs. That's Title I funding, Title II, Title III, Title IV. So that application is something that we submit annually, and it focuses on 3 major areas, mostly focusing on our growth for our students in reading and math. So that's how we identify if the funds that we are spending, so those funds are purely supplemental. That means that they have to be funds that are above and beyond what you all allocate or what you approve in your budgets from state or local funds. These are federal funds, so they're supplemental on top of that. So again, when we're measuring the successful use of those funds, it's if our students are growing in their math and reading proficiency. And then also, if our students who are English language learners are making progress, because specifically Title III addresses those students. And overall, our success is looking at our graduation rate, which ours is typically very high, so that's always something really great to write about. These are funds we've received for a long time. We had a very slight decrease in Title I this year, just a couple $100 out of a $1.3 million budget. So that's not overly concerning because we do know our enrollment, as many districts across North Carolina, has changed. Our Title II and Title III both saw a slight increase in funding, and Title IV was almost, I think it may have been just a few dollars decrease. So our funding is very similar to what we've had in the past, and our goals, quite frankly, are also very similar. We pay for some extra staffing in our Title I schools. So those are our 5 elementary schools. We pay for some extra staffing to decrease our ratio there. We pay for professional development for those teachers in those schools, parent and family engagement activities to bring parents in, and just do a variety of those. But I do need your approval to submit this to the state. So I would seek your approval, or excuse me, I would also take any questions you might have about any of those programs or the application itself.
Do I have a motion?
I think Ms. Moore has a question. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
The family part, could you explain it further? I didn't understand.
Yes, very good question. So specifically in Title I, the federal law says that you have to set aside at least 1% of the funds. So of the 1.3 million we get, we set aside at least 1%, and we set aside a little bit more of that. And those are restricted funds for activities to involve our parents or the families or caretakers of those students in their education. So it can't just be that we're going to have people in for a hot dog supper, but it can be that we are going to have people in for a hot dog supper, and they're going to visit their child's classroom, and they're going to learn about what they're learning in reading that year, what they're learning in math that year. Some schools choose to purchase materials like We Both Read books. So it gives the parents coaching ideas on how they can work with reading, with their child at home, and it literally has a page that's at the child's appropriate reading level, and then a page where the parent can read and give them, more background information. So each school, their SIT team, their school improvement team, will vote on how they want to use those funds, but it is restricted to parent and family engagement. So they can't say, oh, we need $200 more for this professional development. It's restricted to those funds to make sure that our Title I schools, that parents feel welcome there and that they are a part of their child's education and know, basically our North Carolina standards and what they're learning. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Title I funds are based on what?
They're based on per pupil allotments. So we get per pupil allotments at each school, but also based on the number of students at that school who qualify for free or reduced meals. So overall, we get a pool, and there's a calculator in my online portal where it will identify the number of students. We typically use our May free and reduced lunch head count. I get that information from Laura Cape and Child Nutrition, and you input that and it calculates it out.
Okay, my question is the Jackson County Community School included as a Title I school?
It is not right now. They would qualify based on the number of students who receive free or reduced meals. However, their funding that they get from state and local funding is so much greater per pupil so in the application, they receive, I think they would get $800 per student in the application as it's calculated out. And they receive way more than that. So I think that calculates up to $55,000. It's in the narrative in here. I'll have to find it and tell you specifically. But I think they have so many extra teaching positions and get other position allotments through state and local funding that they are already getting above the amount that they would receive through Title I. But I mean, that is something that we can, discuss for the future. But formularily in that, we have historically not identified them as a Title I school because of the amount of state and local funds that they receive to support that school, which does need a lower staff to student ratio and the other needs. And they're on that alternative accountability model, which also impacts when you're on the alternative accountability model, that growth for the reading and math and the data that we identify is also a little different for that school.
It's also important to remember, this is why we push so heavily for all of our families to fill out that free and reduced lunch application.
Very much so.
It impacts more than just students getting lunch. It impacts our Title I funding as well.
So much so. If I could say anything to the public, I would say even if you plan to pack every day for your child, as I do for mine, you should still fill out the application because there's so many funding sources that are linked to that if you do qualify, it benefits your child in so many ways beyond lunch, as you said.
Okay, I question Blue Ridge School.
Yes.
They have, the number of teachers they have exceeds what they should have based on their enrollment. And so the cost is more for that school, but aren't they a Title I school?
They are a Title I school, and part of the number of teachers allotted to them are purchased through Title I dollars. So they use a part of their Title I allocation, and it looks like a position that carries forward because the principal and the SIT team chooses each year, yes, we don't want to give up an extra teacher and have to do a combination class or something. And Christy or someone else would have to advise, but I think they also receive a small schools position. Do they still receive a small schools additional position?
Okay, well, I would just like to ask that you consider the Jackson County Community School.
Okay.
Because the percentage of students on free and reduced lunch, as I understand, is 100%.
So yes, they qualify because they are a community eligible school. Remember when we had multiple schools where every child at the school got free and reduced meals? The formula at the state level is however many kids automatically qualify, which for them, I think it's 60 or 70, you apply a 1.6 multiplier. So that does get them right up at 100%. Yes, ma'am. So I think we can definitely take that into consideration for our future applications. And I can talk with my regional consultants at federal programs as well about that.
Thank you.
Does it
Yes, ma'am.
hurt that school to include them in that application? Any other funding sources?
I don't know that it would hurt them from other funding sources. I do have to do a comparability report, and so it would increase them to be getting significantly more than other schools who serve that same age range of students. I would ask for other people to weigh in on that decision. I do think it would potentially put them to be in federal regulations in terms of their student performance. Because even though we at the state level adopt for them to be on an alternative accountability level, if you are a Title I school, the federal government doesn't necessarily acknowledge that alternative accountability, and so they could go into CSI or TSI, like school improvement status, based on being identified as Title I.
Which is a designation we certainly don't want to add to the community school. It carries some heavy negative connotations that go along with that. And I think, you know, the crux of all of this is the community school is very well funded through various grants and other organizations, and one of them I'm bringing to you in just a few minutes. So adding them as part of the Title I recipients for funds would mean that we, even though they already receive a lot of funds from other sources, that we would take that away from our elementary schools too. So there's that pot of money that you have to divvy up in layman's terms, and that would mean that the other schools would receive less funding, while Jackson Community School, which has additional funding sources, wouldn't lose anything, they would be gaining. Does that make sense?
I just don't know the additional funding sources. I'm having them more focused on, I don't know.
One of them is going to be, talk about in just a minute, with a position, but they get at-risk school funds. They had been eligible for a grant for several years, and we think after data is released on Thursday that might go away, but it helps us to fund other things. For example, the community school has a new position that we'll talk about in a minute, but hasn't had an assistant principal, and so we pay now for a position for that assistant principal. So they're receiving lots of additional support above and beyond not getting Title I monies.
And specifically on page 23 in the application, just so you all are aware of what we're submitting to the state information-wise, based upon the end of the year, those May head counts that I said that we identified, they had 77 students enrolled at that time. And so we would, if they were in a normal 6th through 12th grade program, we would allocate approximately 4 teachers. It's actually 3 point something, but we were going to round to a 4. And they had 7 regular ed teachers. So that's not CTE or EC, that's just the teachers who are providing English, math, art, those type of things. So an estimated cost for the 3 additional staff that they receive, so not including the AP or those other things, is approximately $195,000. If they were a Title I school, they would have received $55,000 of Title I funds. So that what we are locally allocating to them of the 3 extra positions is much greater than what they would qualify under Title I. It's almost 4 times as much. So from a need base of what we write into the plan, it doesn't show that they have as much need for support financially. The students who attend that school have many needs and need many areas of support, but it may not be aligned to Title I funding. But I definitely hear your concern, and I think that's something that we can continue to monitor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we approve large and submit the application for consolidated federal programs into 23.
A second. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed?
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you very much.
And Jeremiah?
Me first.
That's-
Nice segue.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
So
skipped
Court was
one
very
over. I'm
organized in
sorry.
putting these back to back, so, the next two things that you have are, items I'm seeking your approval on, and they are two memorandums that come to us from communities and schools. So I'm gonna talk, first about, the one at Jackson Community Schools, since we just finished talking about that. So we, already have a partnership with communities and schools. We have a person who works full-time at Smoky Mountain Elementary. But we were approached, Angie and I, last spring, to see if we were interested in getting a new position that would be completely grant funded. So we're not paying anything for this, and it is a person who works specifically with our juniors and seniors and follows them through graduation and a couple years after that. So it's kind of a Job Corps type program, but not the Job Corps program that you're thinking of. It's really an opportunity for us to have a live person in the building, which they already have, who started 2 weeks ago, who works on coaching kids. They focus on keeping them straight in their academics. They have all those responsibilities and rights that they can see grades and have individual conversations with kids. And it's really, I see it as a coaching mentor role, and it comes to us completely free for the next 2 years. It's grant funded. So it's another person in our building to support our students who are often some of ours who are facing additional struggles. And we're giving them another person to interact with and positively support. So again, I'm bringing this as an action item, even though there is no money exchanging hands, because it is grant funded and we're guaranteed that for the next 2 years. So that's the first approval, and we can do those together. The second one is also with communities and schools, and that is a position that we have had for, I think, as Angie and I look back, for 8 to 10 years. And this is a person who works with students in a support role, but in a different path, I guess you would say, because they're not working with graduates, but they're working with students who we look and follow their academics, their attendance, and their behavior. And so this position is one that had been grant funded in previous years, but that grant has ended. And so for the upcoming year, we will be paying for this position, not the whole role, but a portion of that. It's a cost of $24,000. One of the things that we work closely with Mr. Treadway is to look at how that role supports our students at Smoky E, and also to track the data to see if the students that Ms. New is the current person who's in that role now, if that support over time is impacting a positive impact on their grades, attendance, and behavior, and those types of things. So knowing that this is the first year in some time that we paid for it, we have already made a plan to reevaluate in the spring, early spring, February, March, if we want to continue that for future years. And really, we're looking at data to see if it impacts our kids in a positive manner. So the first position at Jackson Community School is completely grant funded for 2 years. And the second position, that is not a new position, but this is the first year we're paying, will be $24,000 for this year. So I seek your approval for both of those contracts with communities and schools.
Will spring reevaluation be enough time to judge if there's a positive impact being made?
Yes, and I say that because our data is being released and the same person has already been working with, but we want to collect data in a different manner. And I think that when Mr. Treadway has met with Ms. New, and then Jill is her supervisor, they have a plan for diverting a little bit from the way that they've been looking at data. You know, our focus across the district is really to be intentional and purposeful and strong in our core, so that we're not pulling kids out to intervene, because we want to have a very strong core so there may not be a need. So they're going to collect data in a different manner. And we think after we do our NC check-ins that we do, which are quarterly, that we'll have some data to see if there's an impact there. Good question.
Is this mentoring just academically?
Academically, behaviorally,
Okay.
if there's some social, emotional concerns, we pull in the counselor and have them involved, so it's part of a team effort.
Is there any further questions or discussion? Okay, do I hear a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding between communities and schools and JCPS for Smoky Mountain Elementary School and Jackson Community School.
Do I have a second? Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? All right, now you're on the agenda, Jeremiah.
Let's see if I can do this on two things at once. All right. I have two action items for you tonight. The first one is for staff laptops. Each year we purchase around 80 to 120 laptops to keep our 4-year life cycle for staff devices. This year we're also going to be providing a Chromebook for teacher assistants and instructional assistants, so I'm super excited about that. We're asking to be purchasing the same laptop models we did last year. We've had very little issues and our teachers have really liked them. I purchased with the North Carolina 204A state contract for microcomputers, and we'll be utilizing the funding from Jackson County for our one-to-one staff and student budget for this purchase. The cost for each unit is $899 plus tax, and our current plan is to purchase 80 laptops, but I'd like to have opportunity to purchase up to 120 if possible. Are there any questions?
What's the if possible, I guess?
We have an opportunity this year because I've applied for some other E-rate funding that I've received to shift some costs. So I might actually have a little extra money this year to purchase more devices. That's what I was able to do last year. So the previous 2 years, we purchased 80 devices a year. Last year, I was able to do 120 because of E-rate, and then we just got approved for more E-rate funding. And I think I'll be able to purchase another 40 devices. We have about 300 teachers, a little over 300 teachers, and if we just buy 80 a year, that's enough to cover all of our classrooms, but not enough to cover other staff that we might have needs. So I'm just trying to be proactive and making sure that we're providing a device for every single staff member that we have.
Any further questions? Okay, do I hear a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the teacher laptop purchase.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? And you're next, Jeremiah.
So just recently, as of Thursday, actually, I received a opportunity to purchase more student laptops for about 50% off from what we paid for them in June and July. It's the end of the model year for this, and in order to be proactive and try to be ready for next school year, I'd like the opportunity to go ahead and purchase the devices that I would be purchasing in the spring for my 9th grader students that are growing up for next year. So we like to purchase our devices in the spring to get them ready for summer so that when students start school, they're ready to start on day one. And this is just a kind of starting this a little bit earlier than I normally would just because of the excellent pricing that we received. We purchased these devices for our 9th graders and they keep them all the way through their high school career. So they'll get them in 9th grade and they'll use the same device all the way until they are a senior and graduate. It's just a good opportunity to save some money if we can. So I'm asking for permission, asking any questions, but I'm asking for commissions to purchase 300 student laptops at $134 per unit, which last time they were $273 per unit. So significant discount.
I have one question. Do we have a secure location to keep these?
We do. So at the high school, we were given an old science classroom by Evelyn as our main facility for supporting the school's technology. And science classrooms have a secure storage for chemicals. And so we had the maintenance department put a separate key on that door that is not used by any of the other ones. And we've been storing our devices in that location. And we keep it locked because there are periods of times in the summer when we bring devices back for working, we may have 1,000 laptops or 2,000 laptops in there.
That's good. Any further questions? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the student laptop purchases.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. So first I noticed an error on the agenda that I didn't catch.
Okay.
So can we correct that now?
What would it be?
So for G, Hello Hero contract for OT and psychological services, it should say Hello Hero contract for EC and psychological services.
Thank you.
I should have caught that, but we contracted with them before for OT, so it just ran right past my line of sight.
Well, and in the definitions, it does say occupational, but that's why I went ahead and listed that.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Ayers, and board members. Jackson County EC Department is asking for your approval for several contracts tonight. So this is due to us not finding direct hires. We've had some of these positions posted for quite some time, and so contracting was our last resort. These are folks that I have a lot of confidence in. I've met with the owner of both companies, so we've worked with the owner of one company for 2 years previously. I reached out to several other folks that are using these contractors, and everyone evoked great confidence in the contractors that we've chosen. So the first contract is with Hello Hero, formerly Enable My Child, for EC services. We're hoping to contract one teacher at Blue Ridge School and one school psychologist for our middle school and high school resource-only classrooms or caseloads. We have contracted with Hello Hero in the past for OT, and the partnership was successful. They're very responsive. The words that I heard from another administrator that has used their services is they don't just hire teachers that teach online or psychologists that do their job online. They hire the best teachers to teach online and the best psychologists. And so that's what we're going to be looking for in their delivery of service. That's our expectation, is that it's a really high quality, high level of service that our students are receiving, because this is something very unfamiliar to us. We did it during COVID. Our teachers did this when we were closed. But this is something unfamiliar for normal operation for us. Carrie Cowan and I have spent a lot of time with the owner of the company and their coordinators. We've met with the teacher that they have recommended for hire, and we think that we can set up a really good, high-quality EC classroom for them. We're still looking for a school psychologist to fill that role, and there are school psych shortages across the nation. So these will be virtual services. I want to make sure that that's clear. But we will also have a paraprofessional in the classroom or in the setting with a student who's working with a school psychologist that would be face-to-face to provide supervision while the virtual provider is online. So do you guys have any questions?
Is the virtual provider just teaching to our class when they're
Yes.
there?
And they're only contracting. So we are hiring one full-time EC teacher. So they don't pop in and teach in Jackson County and then pop in and teach in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. They are just, so they're going to work 40 hours a week for Jackson County schools. They're going to do that virtually. So I can say, come to our EC meeting, come to our training, come to Wit and Wisdom training, come to Wilson training. I can use them just as I would any other EC staff member.
That's a good point. I was going to expand on that a little bit. Not only are they teaching, but they are the caseload manager for that. So they will be holding IEP meetings alongside with the LEA rep and everyone else. So they're not just engaged with the kids during school, but they are responsible and engaged in holding those meetings and communicating with parents.
Are we still seeking an EC teacher? Or are we still posting that for Blue Ridge?
Great question. It is still posted. We'll continue to recruit. We would probably stay in this contract and use them in another capacity, or somehow stay in this contract at least through Christmas, to give them an opportunity to move their staff member to another caseload. We want to give our partner enough time to, our ideal candidate is a face-to-face candidate. So we will continue seeking a face-to-face candidate and would put that person in the classroom too.
If you were to find an EC teacher and you want to switch the service to a different, category, would you come back and seek approval for that?
If that's your wish, I would. I wouldn't necessarily move this caseload from Blue Ridge. We would just distribute it so that they would have extra support until I wouldn't unless I had a hole that I don't know about. I mean,
Yeah.
we are still seeking an EC teacher at Smoky Mountain High School. And I think everybody else is full. You all to see. Jackson Community School is we have that covered, but we could use some extra support there.
Will the parents be notified?
Yes, so that was one of the tasks that Carrie Cowan and I gave the teacher that we met with, was to draft a letter that she would send to the teachers to say, this is who I am, this is how services will be provided, these are we're gonna do a meet the teacher. You're welcome to come and meet her.
Okay.
And then we want to make sure and offer a lot of opportunity for that, because we know that communication is key to parents feeling confident in this model.
I know you've said that you've met with the owner and you've met with the teacher and things. Have you actually seen the service being, have you actually been in a room when the service is being used?
I have not seen, I have, so I can describe what the model looks like based on what they have said to me. So we'll set the classroom up like a lab. So you all would be sitting like you are right now with your laptops, and the teacher is on her laptop at her home, wherever she lives. Students will have headphones on, and there will be a TA that also is set up. So it'll look much like this. The teacher is teaching, they are listening. The TA is helping them stay on task. She'll be using our curriculum. She will be our EC instructional coach, and the instructional coach at Blue Ridge is already setting up foundations and Wit and Wisdom online supports. Mr. Holt is helping them set up iReady instructional supports so that she has what we have. And the other piece I think is key to this is that we monitor progress closely to be sure that students are making progress in light of their circumstance. So to make sure that we are meeting that FAPE standard for all students. And FAPE stands for Free and Appropriate Public Education. I'm sorry, when we speak in acronyms, that's not helpful.
Are there any further questions?
So I think on here, and I may be confused, so there's the school psychologist, there's a special ed teacher, and then there's a classroom aide.
So they have the classroom aide. They are recruiting for a teacher assistant to be face-to-face that may work as a contracted employee too for Hello Hero. I'm trying to keep all my companies for Hello Hero. We are also looking, if you look on Jackson County Public Schools, we have an ECTA posted for Blue Ridge. And Ms. Cowan and I are looking for candidates. So right now we have a substitute teacher in there who is a retired certified teacher that is going to be our paraprofessional. So it's an ESS sub that's in there right now that will remain that person until we can hire a paraprofessional or they can. We put it in both places because some people want to work for Jackson County Schools because we are Jackson County Schools, and some people may want the benefits of working for a contractor, but they would still be a facilitator face-to-face. We wouldn't have a teacher virtual and a TA virtual.
Any further questions? Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the Hello Hero contract for EC and psychological services.
Do I have a second? A second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Okay, you're up next, Kelly.
So I'm also asking for board approval to contract with Beautifully Intertwined. I practiced saying that all day today. For occupational therapy services. This is a face-to-face contractor. They are local in our region. Their plan is to provide one certified occupational therapy assistant for the caseload at Scotts Creek and one certified occupational therapy assistant for the caseload at Blue Ridge. Did I get that right? Yes. And one OT for supervision. So they will spend, so it's not 3 full-time people, it's 2 days. So the codas will be, one coda will service the OT caseload at Scotts Creek, one coda will service the OT caseload at Blue Ridge, and then they have an OT that provides their supervision. And it's similar to the model that we have with our direct hire OT in our coda. Our OT caseload has just grown, and it's time for us to seek an additional OT to support the caseload. We did have this position posted since maybe since January, and we have not successfully hired a direct hire. So we were glad to have the opportunity to contract with Beautifully Intertwined, if you all approve.
Kelly, you said the codas would be serving those 2 schools for 2 days each week.
One day so there are 2 different employees because
Okay.
one serves their caseload up in Cashers and Highlands anyway for this company. So that person will serve the Blue Ridge caseload on one day because it's not enough students for them to need more than 1 day. 1 day is enough
Okay.
time for
That
them.
was my question. We've already checked the number of students and the fact that 1 day of service is gonna
Yes.
be okay with that caseload.
Yes. Yes. And it provides a nice reduction of service to our OT and our OT assistant who run around the county like their heels are on fire. That's how they do it. Because they're all wonderful. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to contract with this group. I think it'll be a good fit. They have already gone around and met principals. Our OT introduced them. Principals had an opportunity to meet and ask questions of their recommended professionals that would provide the service.
I think if I'm not mistaken, there are only 3 universities in the state of North Carolina that graduate occupational therapists. And their graduating class is like 6 or 8
Right.
a year, so it's almost impossible to find one.
Yeah, we're fortunate that SEC does have a certified OT assistant program. But also it's the burden of the state's hiring range for occupational therapists and what they can make in private practice, what a psychologist can make in private practice, and it's pushing these contracts.
Any further questions? Okay, then hear a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the Beautifully Intertwined contract for therapy services.
Do I have a second?
I'm second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Ayers, Madam Chair, and members of the board. You have in your packet a submittal for needs-based capital grant. This is a resubmission, but there is some information on that has changed. When we applied for the grants in March of last year, we were in a district that the state had designated that we would only need to provide a 5% match for the grants if we were awarded. And so Dr. Ayers and I took that to the commissioners approved, the board approved the grant, we submitted it. We were not successful at getting the grants. 75% of the grants that were awarded to districts that had already received the grant prior, and the cost of the projects had gone up so much during COVID that they used that money to offset the rise in construction costs. So now the state has recalculated what they want for matching, and we've been designated as a 15% match district. Also, you will notice that some of the costs of the projects have changed. Some have gone up, some have gone down from the previous grant. That's because you will remember that prior, I was calculating those grants based on information that I could get from the state and from contractors and from architects and did an estimation. The board approved back in the spring to contract with Clark Nexon to provide conceptual designs for these projects and also assist in estimating. And so the estimates are provided by the architect. So those two things together changed the amounts, but it did not change our intent, which is to go for a grant. First grant would be for Fairview Elementary School that would provide a building that would have a 8,000 square foot kitchen and lunchroom space, and also 8,000 square feet of additional classroom space, which the school would like to utilize to move sixth grade out of a pod and into traditional classrooms. The second grant would be for Smoky Mountain High School, which would update Smoky Mountain High School Stadium to bring it up to ADA compliance. It would build new bathrooms and concession stand on the visiting side. It would upgrade the existing concession stand. It would create buddy seating on the home side so that students or visitors with physical disabilities would be able to access seating equally to non-disabled peers. It would also create a transportation way, whether it's a ramp or whatever means the architect can design, so that the first level and the second level could be accessible for somebody with accessibility issues. And then what else for the stadium? And that's it for the stadium, but it would also include a new track to be constructed on the Jones Street project, or Jones Street property. That'd be the second grant that we applied for. And then the third would be for Blue Ridge School, would be to build a 16,000 square foot gymnasium space with performance space, and then also 8,000 additional square feet of classroom space for Blue Ridge. Happy to answer any questions about the grant's resubmittal. If not, I would request your approval for this, seeing how it is due this evening, and after our chair signs it, I will send it off to the state.
Is the county still providing the match, or are they still doing 5%, or are they going up to 15?
Yes, that's a great question. I apologize for not sharing that. So Dr. Ayers and I did go to the county commissioners the week before last, and they agreed to match the 15%. So we have funding from Article 40, 41, and 46 tax dollars to do the match. We also, the county commissioners, wrote a joint letter of support for the project. They are fully in favor of the project and us getting the funding.
Is there any further questions? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the resubmission of the needs-based capital grant application.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Thank you very much.
And while we're talking about the capital projects, I think we haven't revisited and met with the commissioners in a while, just to relook at the 10-year plan and kind of where we're at on that. Do changes need to be made? So I would request that maybe after the election in November, we schedule a work session with our county commissioners, just to kind of revisit that plan, and especially since we have new board members, to make sure that we're all on the same page.
And we might possibly have an answer for the grant by the
There you
end,
go.
so.
Yeah,
later.
absolutely.
Perfect,
Very good. Thank y'all.
thank you. Dr. Ayers?
The next two are pretty quick items. These are field trips, so it's so good to be going on field trips in a fairly normal environment. So I request your approval for Smoky Mountain Elementary first grade students to go to Pigeon Forge. I need your approval because that's out of state, even though it's not very far. And the second one is the fourth grade at Fairview Elementary to go to Ripley's Aquarium, and that is an out-of-state and an overnight field trip. So I seek your approval for both of those out-of-state field trips.
Is there any questions?
First grade overnight?
No, but it's out-of-state, so.
Right.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve field trips 1 and 2.
Have a second? Okay. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? we're back up.
I'm back again. So for your policy updates for this month, the first one, I'm asking for a first reading of policy 433-4. This is a policy that we did not have before. This was created by your school board association and reviewed by your attorney. And basically, the gist of this will be that any drones that are operated by the school district will be in full compliance of FAA regulations, which has been the case. So currently, we have drone usage in our district is in the classroom. Coursework at Blue Ridge Early College and at Smoky Mountain High School contain that. They have followed the FAA regulations. In fact, participation in those programs can get you an FAA license to operate a drone. But we have entertained with maintenance the idea of us using a drone ourselves to monitor property lines, roofs, and things like that. And so this would govern over that. But this would be for a first read. The updates that I would ask for your approval on, again, are changes based on general statute and case law. These are from your school board association and have been recommended by your school board attorney. So I'd ask for your approval for those policies.
Any questions? Turn your motion.
Make a motion that we
Thank you very much.
Before we move into closed session, I just want to make a note, all of our principals are here and our directors, so I've requested that they be here for our board meetings. We were doing that, and then we weren't doing that, and then we were doing that, so now we're back. I think it's really valuable to have you all here and hear our discussions with them. So thank you for being here. I know it's the 7th day of school and it's 7:02 and you're exhausted. So when we go into closed session, I recommend you go home. That's all I want to say.
And thank you very much. I know it has been a long day for you. At this time, we will be going into closed session pursuant to GS 143 31811 for the following purposes. Under subsection A1, to prevent the disclosure of privileged or confidential personnel information pursuant to GS 115C 319-321, and A3, to discuss matters protected by the attorney-client privilege. Do you have a motion? Go into closed session.
I move that we go into closed session.
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor? All right.
That we go back into open session?
Maybe that motion.
Yeah, you don't need to do
Okay,
that.
okay, we're done. Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, Dr. Ayers.
So I am seeking approval for our personnel action and agenda, employee recommendations 1 through 46, employee resignations 1 through 10, employee retirements, number 1, and staff, non-staff, and returning coach recommendations 1 through 16.
I make a motion that we approve employee recommendations 1 through 46, employee resignations 1 through 10, employee retirements 1, and staff, non-staff, and returning coach recommendations 1 through 16.
All those in favor? Right. Our next board meeting, and I don't have the date in front of me, will be at
It's at the very bottom of your
September
agenda.
27th.
Oh, it's at the
I'm
very bottom
sorry.
of your agenda.
Big black letters, and I can't see it. Will be on September 27th at Scotts Creek Elementary School at 6 p.m.
That is a return to visit the schools for our board meetings. So I know it's cumbersome work on Jeremiah and Cora, but we really appreciate it, and our schools will be highlighting and showcasing things at each.
And they will host a dinner for us.
They will host it.
Typically, about 5:30, so come early and.
It's in their library last time.
Yeah, and each one, sometimes it's media center, sometimes it's cafeteria. I think Scotts Creek,
Auditorium.
yeah, Scotts Creek is auditorium, so.
All right. Do you hear a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting?
Make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
I have a second?
A second.
All those in favor?
Do you want to stay here all night?
Thank you.
Jeremiah,
I'm shutting it off. You good?
could I get